This podcast is brought to you by the School of Advanced Study, University of London.
Let's make a start. Very warm welcome to the Institute of Commonwealth Studies. I'm Philip Murphy, I'm director here. Welcome to Senate House, this wonderful historical building, wartime Ministry of Truth. A great deal of history, modern history has taken place in these halls. The Institute of Commonwealth Studies is one of 10 institutes which makes up the School of Advanced Study. And we are funded by government, by HEFCE, to be national research centres. And I mean, that is a challenge for us, but also a great opportunity. The challenge is to reach beyond London, to be more than just part of the University of London, to be a genuinely national centre, bringing people together. And this is what we've been trying to do by moving towards this kind of workshop formula. The sort of the day-long event. I just have in the back of my mind, I hope they don't start drilling. I'm going to go and kind of see what's happening. Bringing people together. So this kind of format where we start mid-morning enables people to come from out of town. We've got a very rich program. I hope those of you who have made a significant journey today, I hope you'll feel that the program has made it worth your while. And particularly, I think we felt that we should be doing more to bring together scholars working across the UK in a variety of disciplines on subjects related to Black British history. Which is why we've started this new research seminar. We're hosting the first one in Senate House. What we want to do over the course of the next few years is to bring the workshop out into the rest of the country, to base workshops in other municipal centres in the UK, all in the hope that we can make links. So I hope you enjoy this programme. It's very varied. We've got wonderful presentations, we have music, we have art, but I hope that the value of the day will reach beyond the programme itself, and that you'll have the opportunity to have conversations and make links with other people working in a similar area with similar interests. I hope you find it a really valuable day. We have about 120 people registered, so I hope there will be a real interaction here that will carry on beyond today, and will carry on over a number of number of subsequent years through this workshop series. And I'd just like to thank Michael and Miranda for putting this together. This has really been, it's been their initiative. They put a huge amount of work into it. And I'm really grateful to them for doing this. And I'm going to hand over to them in a minute to allow them to explain a little bit more about the kind of intellectual rationale of what we're doing today. But finally, before I hand over, just some rather mundane housekeeping issues. Bathrooms at the back, through the double doors, 2 sets of double doors beyond the stairs, and then on your right. We are going to run most of the sessions today here in the Chancellor's Hall, but we will break for coffee at 5 o'clock and then have the concluding discussion downstairs in the Macmillan Hall, which is the big hall on the ground floor towards the left as you're going down. It's actually the room in which Beveridge launched the Beveridge Report in 1944. I said this place was full of history. Finally, and often you think this is just a formality in introductions, But the fire alarms here are a little bit temperamental, particularly when you have workers behind you who might sort of cut through an electrical cord. If the fire alarm does go off later on today, it's real or something is happening anyway. So we assemble in the car park downstairs towards Mallard Street. But just finally, I hope you have a wonderful day. I've really been looking forward to this. And again, thanks to Miranda and Michael for making it possible.
Well, I have to obviously reply to say thank you so much to Philip for having us. I hope we'll be invited back after today. And thank you to all of you so much for coming today, because that's what the whole purpose of this is. So that's what means most to us, is to see you all sitting here today to join us in this conversation that we really feel needs to happen. So I just want to make a few sort of comments about why I'm here today, why I want us all to be here today. 30 years ago, Peter Fryer published this book. It's my treasured copy that I got, I think, at the first BASA conference I attended some time ago now. Anyway, he published this book, and the first sentence read, "There were Africans in Britain before the English came here." And the remaining 631 pages went on to detail, it's a nice big weighty tome, isn't it? Went on to detail their history from the Roman invasion all the way up to the 1981 riots. This was published in 1984. And this was really a political intervention. You know, as Fryer wrote in his final sentence, if, as has been suggested, I'll pretend I'm reading it right. If, as has been suggested, traces of black life have been removed from the British past to ensure that blacks are not part of the British future, the present book is offered as a modest contribution to setting the record straight. I think we'll all agree it's not that modest at all. But unfortunately, this is a lesson that still needs to be learned. The present immigration debate seems to be conducted by people entirely ignorant of this history. Case in point, last year, UKIP had to formally ban its members from using the term bongo land, which made us all shudder, I'm sure. But nonetheless, I think over the last 30 years since this book came out, historians have built on Fryer's far from modest contribution. His book didn't come from nowhere. He was part of a generation of pioneers, some of whom I'm delighted to see here today. For example, those who contributed to this special issue of History Today in 1981, which again I finally got hold of when I was in their offices last year. And I thought, you don't happen to have the September 1981 copy, do you? Managed to get hold of that, I'm very pleased. But I mean, this has got the history of blacks in Britain on the front cover, and pages covering with articles by sort of starting here with Paul Edwards, Ian Duffield, who's here today, and David Daberdeen and James Wolven, who've both sent their support today but couldn't make it, and many more. And I think that sort of was the start. Although you may correct my history, I was only born a year later, so. But I think there's, I think the other sort of seminal moment perhaps was in 1991 when the Black and Asian Studies Association was formed, with founder members including Marika Sherwood and Hakeem Adi, continuing Fryer's crusade to educate the British public and challenge its institutions when they didn't include the history that they really should have done. And I think BASA also did a lot to uncover further evidence of the African presence in Britain. For example, for my period, the early modern period, Fryer lists, Fryer only spends the first sort of 13 pages, covers about up to 1700. He lists evidence of a total of about 22 African individuals present in England and 9 in Scotland, up to 1640. By 2004, when I began my research, Marika was able to send me almost 100 references that the association had managed to compile and started publishing in their newsletter. And since then, I think, as a kind of optimistic sign of how much, how much movement there has been in this research. From those 5 pages, those sort of 10 pages have expanded into 3 books worth at least. This is Imtiaz Habib's book from 2008. We have Onyeka's Blackamoors, which was published last year, and this is my thesis, which hopefully is going to be a book published called Black Tudors in 2016. So from those 5 pages to this kind of heavy pile of tomes. So we're going there. Things are moving in the right direction. As you know, we're coming to the end of another Black History Month, the 28th, since it was established here in 1987. But increasingly, it's hard to spot the history in Black History Month. I've seen salsa dance classes creep onto some programs. I think it's a bit of a tenuous, And the history we do get is often limited to the last century or dominated by American narratives. We know about the bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama, but how many of us hear about the Bristol bus boycott?
Yeah.
Yeah, here. And I think Black History Month is a staging post. We need this history all year round. But I think in order to achieve that, we have to show it to be what we all know it is, a vital part of British history. We need to put that focus back on this being UK History Month. Americans have their own Black History Month in February. In the UK, here we need Black History Month to have a more British focus, which is why we're asking today what's happening in Black British history. And just to illustrate that further, I think all we have to do is sort of go to the centre of London and have a look in Trafalgar Square. You probably all know this one, but there we are, Nelson's column, a bombastic symbol of British history and victory, so much so that his ship was called the Victory in Battle of Trafalgar in 1805. But this bronze relief on the base of it, showing the death of Nelson, if we zoom in, you can see there was an African sailor right there in the centre of that seminal British event. We don't know who he is. We know that there was one man listed as an African on the Victory called George Ryan, aged 24, and there were not further 9 individuals who were described as being West Indian. And at Trafalgar, the Battle of Trafalgar altogether, the British Navy had, we think, 188 men of African origin. But we know, that's the footnotes, but this image is right there showing the central part that I think Africans play in British history. So I think the outlook is bright. I think that there's renewed interest in the subject. We're all here. I think that from the BBC to Hollywood to exhibitions that are on in London right now, at the Tate, at the Black Cultural Archives, at Autograph ABP, there is growing interest in this subject. And while Fryer's book came out, in the context of the Brixton riots this summer, Windrush Square was crowded once more, but this time to celebrate the opening of the Black Cultural Archives there. And I'm really looking forward to their curator Hannah Ishmael's presentation this afternoon in session 2. And this is an area of vibrant, ongoing research. There were over 30 papers submitted for the 9 slots we had available today. And as we'll see in the first session, the current Black Chronicles 2 exhibition uses photographs of Black Victorians to reveal a whole missing chapter in 19th century Black British history. And Adrian Stone's work is a fascinating example of how the growth of interest in family history can lead to new discoveries about Black British families and their ancestry. And there's plenty more to be discovered in the archives, as we'll see in session 2, when we hear from Hannah Ishmael, from Kathy Chater, who will give us a researcher's eye view to the archives, I think, and from Nigel Brown-Davies, who's found ample information about Sierra Leoneans in archives such as the British Library and the National Archives. So finally, before I hand over to Michael, who I'd like to thank for all his hard work in bringing today to fruition, I just wanted to say why I think today is important. A lot of the work I've mentioned has happened independently, in relative isolation. So I think it's really vital for us all to come together and share our work and to spread the word. Michael's going to say a bit more about spreading the word in a minute, but this is why we've invited you all here today. Our aim is to establish a national network of researchers and communicators in the field of Black British history. So I really hope you'll fill in the form that you have in your pack, telling us, you know, your name and what area you're really interested in, so we can start putting that together. And together I hope we can work towards the goal of not only providing the basis of an updated version of Fryer's work. In fact, I was talking to a Christian, we think it might have to be a kind of 10-volume, you know, kind of guide, it might have to be a series of books to provide a definitive. Because, you know, the Tudor section, I mean, if I tried to bring you a pile of books to demonstrate, you know, the research that's been done in the 18th century since Fryer wrote, or later other periods that I know even less about, I imagine it would sort of go on like this, we'd have the whole pile up to here. So, you know, there's a lot more work to be done, but I think, you know, the best way to make that happen is to work together and ensure that this history is communicated to the broadest possible audience, the audience it deserves. So thank you so much, and over to Michael.
Good morning, good morning. I do not want this to turn into a love-in, but I want to thank my mother. I want to thank the Institute of Commonwealth Studies, and Philip Murphy in particular for helping us put this on. And I want to thank Miranda. Working with Miranda has been a challenging experience. We're still friends, still talking. But more important, let me tell you, I want to thank you for being here today. It's just great when I look around. When we had our first meeting a couple of, 6 months ago to organise this, and the mix of people was just fantastic. Young, old, black and white, academic, non-academic. It was a rich field of people, and that's what I see before me today. I'm not going to go about the Obama, rainbow, all that kind of stuff. It's just great. It's an eclectic slate. It's an eclectic slate that we do here today. I want to share just some thoughts on why I think it's important, because this conversation is important. It's important not just for us in this room, but it's important for a wider society. I want to hopefully demonstrate to you just how important that work is to the society at large. Because central to what we do today is the conversation between those of us actively involved in researching and communicating this history. As together, we can create a dialogue between scholars, independent ones like myself, academics, and I'll come back to academics in a moment, but also educationalists, mainstream, supplementary, archivists, curators, policymakers, all those with the stakeholders, all those stakeholders in Black British history. Because the conversation is central. It's that discussion that gives Black British history its purpose. It's raised on death. Our interaction today. It keeps it alive, it keeps it fresh, it keeps it real, it keeps it relevant. But let's be real, these are challenging times. Because public money is short, university history departments are under threat, there's cuts and closures. But I believe through these conversations we have today, we can show how such actions by the government are short-sighted as they undermine the very values that created and sustained the free and open society that is Britain today. Okay, now you're going to think, Michael, you're going a bit too far. We are a free and open society. If you compare us to other countries around the world, even some countries in Europe are supposed to be free. This is a free society, and I say those values are important. Having said that, I believe there are some university humanities departments have brought these cuts on themselves. They brought those coaches on themselves. I was an outsider in history. Well, I'm quite new to it. It's only started in 2000. I'm a non-history academic. I come from a science technology background. But I came through independent study to Black British history via the OU through an art history degree. But the word I got here was appalled. I don't use the word, I was shocked, surprised to see how elitist academics could be, studying their subject almost in isolation to the complete exclusion of society. Yes, they had interdisciplinary meetings. The English department spoke to the history department, but I could see little or no attempt to connect what they did, connect what they did to the man in the street. One of the things I talk about, because I do work, I try to work with young black kids, is the work that I do should be relevant to what they do. We'll come back to what that means, what that really means later on. But it's important. What you do should be relevant. Whatever work you do in an institution should be relevant to I believe, those kids on the street, particularly, and I'll give you the vision now, is for kids coming out of care, going into the community, 15, 16-year-old boys and girls. we have to teach them how to shop, to cook. They're on the very edge of their life, and we need to give them part of what we do, I think, helps them with their identity, and I'll come back to that. I recall attending one lecture, this is a public lecture where the presenter would drift in and out of Latin and medieval French and German. And I'm not a specialist. And the audience would nod, like you're nodding and smiling now, in a knowing way. This was elites talking to elites. They seemed to be indifferent to the impact or meaning of the research or findings had on society at large. There was no context, there was no connection, no conversation. And I was really frustrated. I've been to meetings here in London with people who just see their little bit and they're happy to talk about their bit and they're experts. But what it means today, they're lost. They're lost. One can then see how so easy it is. You can see how easy it is for the funding to be cut in those departments. So it's easy because the elites, they've lost touch. As I say, history has to be real, to be relevant, to make connections. The Black British history we'll show today, I know, will not be elitist. It will look to make interdisciplinary connections, starting conversations, both public and individual. I'm particularly looking forward to section 3, as Miranda said, because this is something I like to be in there. It's called Spreading the Word, the new developments in Black British history. Spreading the word is essential for all of us in these economic and religious, in these times of economic and religious anxiety, where the values that keep us together are being undermined, are being questioned. So those closures we're making have to be set against biased, agendaed actions of those on the left and the right, politics and religion. They're all making their point. We have to, if we're going to close these departments down, we're going to realise what we're doing. We're leaving the field free for those on the left, right, to come up with any ideas. So we've got all these I've written here, ill-informed tabloid headlines and radio soundbites. You know, we're talking about the Daily Mail, we're talking about the Express, UKIP. You know, we're leaving the field open for their thoughts and ideas to become lingua franca, to become reality. And we know there's another side, and hopefully we will reveal that today. Now, I appreciate questioning the future of democracy sounds rather apoplectic, but as more and more humanity departments have been closed or reduced in staffing levels around the country, we as an open democratic society are in danger of forgetting why the humanities are important and precious to our society. Now, there's a word we had a lot on the news today, and I'm not going to go into that, radicalisation. Radicalisation. You know, and that's part of and I would equate, I'm being dramatic here for effect, but some of those closures to what's happening, because we're losing touch the importance of history, what binds us together, that history that makes us one. It's really important. Because I believe there are 3 key reasons why Black British history we'll be discussing today is important. The first, in studying Black British history, we are encouraging critical thinking. Not accepting history at face value, asking questions, challenging traditional thought, looking to resolve the tension between celebrating the achievements of those of the Black African descent in the UK, while at the same time applying a critical perspective to the past. You know, you don't just accept these things willy-nilly, you know, because he said it's got to be true. We need to keep give them that questioning mind, that critical thinking mind. And this is what I'm looking forward to what David also was going to say in session 3 about television, radio, and the peculiar challenges of Black history resolve. The challenge, let me say again, the television, radio, and the peculiar challenges of Black history, and how it resolves the tension between celebrating Black history, yet at the same time remaining factual, yet at the same time attracting a mass audience. That's not an easy triangle to resolve, but he does it. And secondly, the study of Black history will give future citizens the ability to understand the significance of another's sufferings and equally their achievements. Able to transcend local loyalties and conventions, to approach the world thinking outwardly and not inwardly, to solve problems. Thinking I know it sounds rather grandiose, but as a citizen of the world, you know, that's the ideal. Okay, you know, if we fall short as we close the departments down and people become a little bit more inward-looking. And here I'm thinking of Mahmoud Whitworth's paper, Doing Justice to the Teaching of Black British History in the Classroom. It's the result of a school teacher and an education academic coming together to show how the study of Black history, Black British history, research can not only be academically rigorous, but also highly relevant to all future citizens of our multicultural society, giving them that wider view of the world essential if they are to understand one another in this diverse multicultural age. While Brown and Ward's paper, the co-production of Black British history, a collaboration between the community and university, in which people of African descent are writing about their own histories, but with the rigour to be found in working with the university. I believe citizens who can think critically and take a worldview are essential for a democratic society to function effectively. And the third and final reason for me why the study of Black British history is fundamental for a free and open society is that history, study of history, gives us the ability to imagine the predicament of another person. It inspires and stimulates our imagination. It is for that reason I write and talk about Africans in the Black African presence in the Renaissance Europe. I discovered that discovering that Black people were in Tudor times, and before I didn't know there were Blacks in Tudor times, it fired my imagination. I recall there was a history program last year, and they made two statements. The first was this: there was no proof there was a Black African presence in Tudor England. I went on to say, and I also went on to say, and it is almost impossible for there to have been a Black African at Dunkirk. I'd read those statements before, but hearing them on national radio gave them a whole new meaning to me. Here was the media through this presenter and her guest once again saying what and what not a Black person could do. Specifically, it was almost impossible for a Black person to have an ancestor at Dunkirk, or equally a family history dating back to Elizabethan times. I would argue, while it is almost impossible, one can equally say it's remotely possible. Remotely possible. Exercising the imagination. In a reply, the presenter fired a reasoned, rational broadside supporting facts to defend her position. And I've no doubt she was well-meaning and the facts are well-researched.
I have doubts on the facts being well-researched.
And she had the references, but she misses my point completely. History should stimulate the imagination. The history saying that it's almost impossible is containing the imagination. I was educated with a Black British history that told with the presenter's accuracy and authority, which most times excluded Black people. Where it did, it chose to include. Where it didn't choose to include Black people, their role was specifically defined. We all know slavery, immigration, colonialism, all the cliches that I don't say we fight against, but we show the other side. But as a Black person, I'm now into a Black British history which is inclusive, not exclusive of people like me. A history in which Black children can see possibilities, not impossibilities, for themselves, their family, their friends, not being ignored, not having to fight to be considered, and certainly not being told that it's almost impossible. A history that can inspire and stimulate, and yet remains respectful to the facts. I think that's important. You know, you've got to be factual. You know, let's not dream here. Let's not make things up. Let's stick to the facts. But at the same time, we can exercise our imagination within that. Without that inspiring imagination, we produce a generation of incomplete citizens incapable of fully understanding one another's sufferings or achievements. The important imagination goes further and deeper as it impacts one's identity and who do we think we are. Who we are as a construct. We create the individual we are. It's an amalgam of many things, including our history. We are who we want to be, or who we believe we should be. In studying Black British history, we are helping a generation of children really know who they are. We are helping them and their parents discover and understand the importance of cultural capital. The importance of cultural capital. We are creating and sustaining that cultural capital. Discussing the contribution of Black Africans, the contribution people of Black African origin have made in creating the society today, demonstrating how they fit into Black history and British society. Through the history we share today, we're developing a history that means so much in these troubled financial and religious times, where it is important that we have a Black British history based on critical thinking, taking a world view, used imaginatively. It's said, if you don't know your history, you don't know anything. You're like a leaf that doesn't know it's a tree. So the history that we're going to share today and the conversation we'll have today, we'll have a generation who know what tree they are part of and what trees share that forest. Thank you.